First, I wasn't surprised something bad like this happened. I had an inkling that something like this was happening.
Yeah.
But what shocked me was the degree of it, the brazenness of the act at the highest levels of the government. I mean, we have the Minister of Justice and the Attorney General of the country. This is the Attorney General is the chief legal advisor to the country. If you have corruption reaching to that level of government, basically there's no level of the government that has been untouched. So for me, initially it was a deja vu. Like, I'm not surprised there is something, because the transitional justice has stalled completely, all aspects of it. But the degree here that is uncovered by the Republic, to me, was truly shocking. The brazenness of the act, how blatant they were, and the complete lack of consequence and lack of any desire on the part of the government to correct all the misdeeds. Because, I mean, in all honesty, it's not possible, even in the cleanest of the government, to prevent all wrongs. But when wrongs occur, you know, there should be, we should at least see some attempts at trying to, I mean, some desire on the part of the people in positions of responsibility to try to correct those wrongs. And what this problem has shown is that there has been no desire at all levels of the government, to address the clear and blatant wrongs that have been done against the country.
Now, looking at the report, when the report came out, obviously, so many instances, the former Minister of Justice, a lot of people felt disappointed as the Attorney General, how the Commission of Inquiry report was handled, the sale of the items, and some, how do you call it, some conflict of interest that happened. Because I think more what the report showed was the conflict of interest that happened. The report did not directly say Ba directly benefited. The report didn't say that. It just showed instances where there were a lot of conflict of interest in his dealings during that process, and also obviously how some of the assets were disposed of, and how we still cannot account for others. And then this led to the government releasing some part of because it's not full, huh?
No, it's not
some
full.
list. In fact, what is left is more
Yes.
than, especially when it comes to the assets.
And their hands were forced. This list should have been released since.
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, it's not only incomplete, but it's not also voluntary. They were forced to do it. Yeah.
Now, you know, the constant raise of conflict of interest in the report. How would you say? Because I tell people we are all related in this country, in some way or the other. You know, if Dr. Gajigo is my friend and he has something somewhere, and I could call and make excuses to follow up something for them, and others, is that a problem in our governance system?
No, it is a big problem. Listen, there is nothing wrong occasionally doing a favor for a friend or relative. But at a certain position of responsibility, in a certain critical point in the nation's affairs, where one has to be very careful. I may even give a bit of a leeway to somebody who has maybe who is new to government, who is not educated, or is a bit unclear about legal affairs. But here we are talking about the Minister of Justice, the Attorney General. In some countries, these two ministries are actually separated.
Yes.
Here we've combined. This position is of very, very importance in the country. I mean, on one hand, you know, you are basically like, you should in fact be able to take the government to task as the Minister of Justice.
Yeah.
But as a Attorney General, you are actually the most important legal advisor to the government.
Yeah.
So you are straddling this very fine line. But, you know, conflict of interest, I think, for me to use that phrase is very, it's very diplomatic.
Okay.
Here it is pure and simple. What I will say, and I'll say this unequivocally, and I'm not going to mince words about it.
Okay.
Ba Tambadou, what he did here is unethical, is corrupt. He's a, so I will say this in very clear time. He's a corrupt and unethical officer. And this one is just This case just revealed it far more clearly.
How is he corrupt though? Because he didn't directly benefit in this.
But how do we know? The person on whose behalf he was involved in is whom? Isn't it a spouse?
But then they were not married at the time of the...
But they got married shortly.
Okay.
Relationships that end in marriage don't start overnight. They start over time. There is significant relationship, a build-up of that relationship. So that relationship was there. And according to people quoted in the story, their understanding of it was Tambadou was involved in this particular land allocation because as if it was his. So that land transaction benefited somebody who he later married. So what is a reasonable interpretation of what happened? That if you, in most situations in the world, marital property is jointly owned. Of course, at the end of the day, in this particular story, that land ended up being sold by the ex-husband of the person involved. But that didn't change the fact that the person who was benefiting was somebody who was in a relationship with Attorney General who he later ended up marrying. So to say that that didn't benefit him personally or directly is hair-splitting. It benefited him because it was benefiting somebody who he was going to be heavily invested in, whose affairs and him would later become intertwined in all aspects of life, socially, legally. So this is pure corruption. But this is not the first time we know Tambadou has done unethical things. There have been, I've written many articles about Tambadou.
Yeah, you have.
We've had situations here where, again, somebody who should know the clear boundaries of law, what is acceptable, what is ethical, went and procured diplomatic passports for his parents to travel to Saudi Arabia. The parents were performing no public or diplomatic duties for the country. Is that the proper use of diplomatic passport? You don't have to be a lawyer to know that that was improper. What was his response when that was brought up to him? He simply requested it. They needed to travel in comfort. Very poor reason. If you need to travel in comfort, you go and buy a business class ticket. A diplomatic passport doesn't automatically give you an upgrade. What is clear here is that our Attorney General, somebody who should be, should go out of his way to know what is happening legally, what is correct, not only, something that appears proper, but also is proper in essence, was the one who actually was engaging in activities where the Gambia government was shortchanged, because these assets were completely, forfeited by the state, which means they become property of the state. So anytime they are disposed of in a way where their value is not realized, the whole Gambian nation, every citizen there is shortchanged.
Yeah.
And when through that process, when the people who benefited in that are close associates and relatives of the Attorney General, that is pure corruption. There is no two way about it. It is corruption.